Hi, in this video I'd like to look at the string stitch and create a couple of simple string stitch designs. But before we get there, I'd like to look at the two properties that determine the look of the string stitch objects, and also consider what happens when we change the shape. So the two settings are the stitch spacing. You can see the spacing from one stitch to the other. If I change that, so I increase the stitch spacing, I get fewer stitches. And if I decrease it, the stitch spacing, I'll get more stitches in the object. The other setting that we have is the chord gap. Now the chord gap is or chord length is the distance between the straight line that the stitch takes and the curve of the vector line. Now I'll just turn the stitches off. That's the vector line. And these are the stitches that have been created. So from there to there is the chord gap. Now the greater the length is, the allowable length for the chord, the more stitches can be created in there. So we'll lift that to say 3. Maybe we'll need to go more. You can see I've gone to 6.8, reduce it down a bit. That the distance, the allowable distance, is greater, therefore we can fit more stitches in the space. And the other thing you should notice from here is that as the arc gets tighter, the chord gap gets greater and therefore more stitches. So there are three things that affect the look of a string stitch. That is the spacing, the chord length, and the shape of the object. Okay, let's go and create some simple Easter designs. Okay, as Easter is just around the corner, let's see if we can make a string stitch Easter bunny. So I'll select my freehand tool and the string stitch. I'll worry about the property settings later. Now this method would also be suitable for a drawing tablet. So I've just left clicked, holding, and I'm dragging around that shape. I'm just using this drawing which I prepared earlier in Corel as a bit of a guide. So I just, with the reshaping tool, I've just reshaped my drawing there to fit onto the line. And continuing on with the freehand tool around the belly, so it's left click, hold down, and just drag and release. And we'll continue on around the shapes. Don't worry if you miss the shape slightly, because we can come back and reshape it without any issue. So this is all one action. Back to there. Okay, so as I mentioned, the drawing was just a guide. I want the start and finish points of each of the objects to align fairly closely. I'll just come back with the reshaping tool and change the shape of this slightly. This object, I'll move the finish closer to the start of the leg. And I think I'd like to have a little round tail on it too. So with the reshaping tool, the shortcut for that is the letter H. I'm going to delete a couple of those round nodes that I can see there and there. So just delete this one here. I'll select it and hit the spacebar button. It'll make it a round node, and drag it in. That's a nice little round bobtail. Now, to do the ears, you can also use your outline tool, but it will create a run or a backstitch, whatever you select from the flyout, and you'll convert it to a running stitch later. So let's just run with a running stitch, and this is just a conventional digitizing. I'll right click to make the curve, enter, continue on with the ear that's behind. Enter. We're going to have a couple of thread trims in this design. At the left click at the point, and the rest of these are right clicks. And hit enter. So we'll select those outline tools or running stitch lines, and then hit the string stitch icon, which has become live. Okay, and you can see that it's created the string stitch there. This back ear, we can't. I'll turn the drawing off. Shift D to turn off a vector drawing. We can't really tell that that's a string stitch, and we're losing a little bit of the effect. And remember earlier, it was the three settings, the spacing, the chord gap, and the shape that determined how the string stitch displays. So I'll change the shape of this. I'll draw that back around there, and I'll draw this in here. So we've got a tighter curve, which allows for more chord gap. So we've got more stitches in the ear, and I think that looks fine. Poor little rabbit's missing an eye, so I'll just select the star tool there, which will create a zigzag stitch. And I'll make that black. And to make it a little rounder, I'll just come in and change the spacing there back to 0.8 of a mil, and make sure that we have no underlay underneath it. So I'll turn the underlay off. And he's missing a mouth, a smiley mouth, so we should select our freehand tool again and just drag in a mouth. And you may want to resequence that so it stitches before the head. And the other thing I'd like to do is change the colour to pink. I'll drag the eye down, and the tail would look nice, I think, if it were white. And we'll drag that down as well. So we've got a little Easter bunny. I did some others earlier, so let's have a look at another tool. How did I create these? Simply with the ellipse tool. So we'll do this rabbit here. So I'm clicking to drag to make a circle, release, click, and we'll make an ellipse. Enter. We've already got the string stitch selected. Just select it, make it a little smaller. And I'll second click it and rotate it a little. Just tilt it forward. Then with my pick tool, right click and drag away. So right click is a select tool, or sorry, a duplicate tool. I'll second click it, drag the rotation point and spin the ears around just a little closer together, and I'll repeat that process. So click in the middle, click again, drag out, click and enter. Okay, so in this exercise, to put more stitches in there, I would need to increase the chord gap. Now I'll just right click and duplicate that again. Grab the corner, hold the shift key so it expands in all directions. Drag it down a little and increase the chord gap. And for the feet, just for something different, we'll use the freehand tool again and put a wiggly line under there. So we've got a stylized footer and underlaid. It's just merely decoration. Let's see what will happen if we increase the chord gap. First of all, we should select the object. And probably a bit of overkill there. And you can play with the shape to get the effect that you're after. And of course what we did then was make it all pink. Oh, we forgot the tail. So we'll use the star tool again. So, and select the white. Click, drag, click, drag, click, and enter. Now that's coming as a zigzag stitch. We could change it to a string, but leave it as a zigzag, and we'll make your density 0.8 of a millimeter again to add some more stitches in it, and make sure we've got no underlay under it, otherwise it becomes too dense. And the eggs, I'll right click the body, drag it out, reduce it in size, right click, drag out, right click, drag up, second click, rotate, just to make it interesting, and change their colour. Okay, so I hope you found that interesting and helpful. Let's copy our first rabbit, Control A, Control C, we'll come back to the bunny digitizing and Control V to paste it in, and 0, and drag it up, and there's our Easter project.